It was just past midnight when a knock came at the door of an old motorcycle garage. Not loud, not urgent, just a soft, steady tapping that didn't stop. The kind of knock that doesn't come from boldness, but from quiet desperation. Inside, the Hollow Creek Riders had just finished a long evening of wrench work. The air was thick with the smell of oil and metal, and three of the older members were elbows deep in rebuilding a 1972 shovelhead. The night had been still until that knock, unexpected, uncertain, and somehow heavy. Cal was the first to straighten. He wiped his hands on a rag so stained it had long forgotten its original color. In his late 50s, Cal had the kind of presence that didn't need to raise his voice. He had shoulders like boulders and eyes that had seen more than they told. Travis, younger and leaner, paused mid-motion, his brow furrowed. And Hank, the oldest of the three, didn't speak. He just looked toward the door with that quiet knowing that comes from having seen enough of life to recognize when something isn't right. Cal crossed the shop floor with slow, deliberate steps and opened the door just a few inches, enough to see who it was, but not enough to let trouble in. Standing outside was a boy, maybe 15 years old. His hoodie was torn at the sleeve, his jeans were caked with dust, and there was a streak of something, dirt, maybe grease, across his cheek. But it was his eyes that held Cal's attention. They were too old for his young face, tired in a way no child's eyes should be. Behind the boy, half hidden in the alley's shadow, stood a girl. She looked about 11, maybe younger. Her coat was too thin for October. Her socks didn't match, and her hair looked like it hadn't seen a brush in days. She clutched a worn book against her chest like it was the only solid thing left in her world.
"Help you?" Cal's voice was low and steady, the sound of someone who didn't rattle easy. The boy didn't flinch. His voice cracked just slightly as he replied, "It's not for me. I'm scared for her." He looked back at the girl, then at Cal again. "She just needs a safe place to sleep. One light, that's all." Travis had moved closer now, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Where are your parents?" The boy's jaw clenched. "Con." Hank finally stepped forward, slower than the others, but there was weight in his presence. He looked at the girl, then at the boy. "Name?" he asked. "Ethan," he said quietly. "And that's Lily." The three men exchanged a look. No words, just something unspoken that passed between them. The kind of understanding that comes from years of standing shoulder to shoulder through both road and fire. Cal opened the door a little wider. "Get inside." Ethan hesitated. His hand tightened on Lily's shoulder protectively. "Just her. I'll stay outside." "I said, get inside," Cal repeated. The tone left no room for argument. The two stepped inside together, and the door clicked shut behind them with a sound that echoed more like a promise than a lock. The inside of the garage was bigger than it looked from the outside. High ceilings, workbenches, tool walls lined with socket sets and wrenches, and bikes in various states of repair. Lily's eyes widened at the sight, filled with both awe and caution, while Ethan remained tense, his shoulders squared like he was waiting for the catch. Hank disappeared into a back room and returned a moment later with a folding cot. He set it up near the far wall, away from fumes and tools. Travis dug through a locker and pulled out a clean fleece blanket, soft and warm despite the faint smell of motor oil. "Sit," Hank said, gently, gesturing to the cot. Lily looked at Ethan, who gave him a small nod. She sat down slowly.
Travis returned with a mug of warm chocolate milk, something he'd quickly heated on the same hot plate they used for coffee. He handed it to Lily without a word. She took it with both hands, her fingers curling around the warmth. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan stood beside her like a guard dog, eyes flicking to every exit, every corner. He was calculating, watching, protecting. Cal noticed it all. The boy hadn't slept in days, that much was clear, but for now, they were safe. And maybe, just maybe, this one night would be enough to change everything. The garage was quiet now. The only sounds were the distant ticking of cooling engines and the soft hum of an old fan in the corner. Lily sat curled up on the cot, the blanket pulled to her chin, the mug of chocolate milk empty at her side. She clutched her book like a shield, her eyes wide and alert, even as sleep tried to tug her under. Ethan sat close, not on the cot, but on the cold concrete floor, back against the wall, knees up, arms resting on them. He hadn't said much since they came inside. His eyes never stopped moving, scanning exits, measuring space, reading people. He didn't relax, not for a second. Cal watched the boy from across the room. He recognized that kind of vigilance. It didn't come from curiosity. It came from surviving something that forced you to grow up too fast. After a long silence, Cal walked over and crouched near Ethan. "When's the last time you slept?" he asked. Ethan shrugged, then muttered, "I'm fine." Cal didn't push, but his gaze lingered just long enough to make the boy shift slightly, as if bracing for a follow-up that never came.
Travis stepped closer to the cot and knelt beside Lily, careful not to startle her. "That's a good book you've got there," he said, nodding toward the worn paperback still gripped in her hands. Lily gave a small nod. "Read it already?" Travis asked. She whispered, "3 times." Travis smiled. "Then we'll get you a new one tomorrow. How about that?" Lily glanced at Ethan. He gave her a slight nod, and only then did she smile back. Hank stood nearby, watching the way Ethan's body barely moved, his chest tight with tension. These weren't just kids who ran away. They were running from something that left bruises not only on the skin, but somewhere deeper. Hank had seen it before, more times than he cared to count. Later, as the garage grew darker and quieter, Lily finally drifted off to sleep. Her breathing slowed, the book sliding from her hands. Ethan didn't move. He kept his gaze locked on the front door, like something or someone might come barging in at any moment. Cal came over and placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. Ethan tensed, but didn't pull away. "You need to rest," Cal said. "Just close your eyes for a couple hours. I'll stay right here." Ethan looked up at him, searching for the trap, the fine print, the part where it all fell apart. He didn't find it. Slowly, hesitantly, he nodded. Then he lay down on the floor beside Lily's cot, still within reach of her. Exhaustion claimed him fast. At first light, the garage stirred. The air was crisp with the scent of oil, coffee, and the faintest hint of autumn. Cal poured himself a cup from the dented old pot near the tool bench. Hank wiped down one of the work tables. Travis rolled up the cot Lily had used, folding the blanket neatly and placing it aside.
When Ethan awoke, it was with a jolt. He sat upright in a rush, looking for Lily. She was nearby, seated with Marianne, the woman who had arrived just after dawn, with silver hair tied back in a braid and eyes that held a calm, knowing kindness. She had brought cinnamon rolls from the bakery down the block and laid them out on the workbench like it was any other morning. Lily had woken to the smell, rubbed her eyes, and followed the scent. Now she sat beside Marianne, nibbling at a roll and listening as the older woman spoke gently, like they'd known each other more than just a few minutes. Marianne didn't ask questions. She didn't pry. She offered warmth, food, and a sense of normal that Lily hadn't felt in a very long time. Ethan stood nearby, watching. He wasn't used to this, people offering something without a catch. Hank handed him a plate. "Eat," he said simply. Ethan hesitated, then took it. The cinnamon roll was warm, sticky, soft. It didn't taste like safety, but it was the closest thing he'd had to it in a while. After breakfast, while Marianne helped Lily freshen up, Travis motioned Ethan to the far side of the garage. The air was cool there, the garage door cracked open just enough to let in morning light. "I used to work trauma care," Travis said, leaning against the tool chest. "Saw a lot of kids come through. You learn the signs." Ethan's stomach tightened. He didn't say anything. I'm not accusing you, Travis added gently, but it's clear someone's been hurting her. Ethan's jaw clenched. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he looked up and spoke quietly. It's not me. Travis nodded. I know. Ethan continued, his voice flat. It's the guy my mom left us with, Rick. He's not family. He just moved in after she left and started paying the rent. Nobody checked, nobody cared. The words poured out, not in anger, but like facts rehearsed too many times.
He had rules, crazy ones. No noise after 8, no food unless he said. She left her stuffed animal out once. That's all it took. His fists clenched. I stepped in, took the hit for her, but I knew we couldn't stay. Travis listened without judgment. When Ethan finished, Travis asked, "Can I check her, just to make sure there's nothing serious?" Ethan paused, then said quietly, "Only if I stay with her." Travis nodded. Wouldn't have it any other way. Later that day, as the afternoon light filtered in through the high windows, something began to shift. Not loudly, not all at once, but in small, steady ways. Lily sat on the floor of the garage with her new book, something about a girl who finds a dragon in a hidden forest. Her knees were tucked under her, and she turned the pages with careful fingers, like she was afraid they might crumble. Nearby, Marianne sat knitting in an old folding chair, her yarn bag beside her, and a scarf slowly taking shape in her hands. She didn't hover, she just stayed close, present, offering the kind of quiet safety that didn't ask for anything in return. Ethan wasn't far. He was standing at the workbench, sorting through an old toolbox that Hank had given him. The older man had handed it to him without ceremony, just pointed to the chaotic wall of tools and said, "Separate these, metric from standard, by size if you can." And that was it. No questions, no lectures, just a task. It was exactly what Ethan needed. His hands moved through wrenches, sockets, and mismatched bolts with surprising focus. It didn't matter that he didn't know what half of them were called. He was doing something useful, something that didn't involve running or shielding or explaining. Every now and then, Hank would pass by and glance at his progress. He never said much, but once, when Ethan was kneeling on the floor arranging socket sets, Hank placed a bottle of water beside him and gave a single nod. Ethan returned it without speaking. That was enough. Meanwhile, Cal, Travis, and 2 other members, one named Diesel and the other called Wren, had gone out on a quiet ride. No fanfare, no announcement, just an understanding among them that someone needed to see where Rick was living. Someone needed to know what kind of situation these kids had been in. They came back just before sunset, and the look on Cal's face told Ethan everything. No one said much, but Ethan knew. He knew they'd seen it with their own eyes, the peeling paint, the broken steps, the way the neighbors looked away. Inside, Rachel Morgan, the lawyer Hank had called, had arrived earlier in the afternoon. She was sharp, dressed in a dark blazer with a leather briefcase tucked under one arm. She shook hands with Cal and Hank like she'd known them for years, then turned to Ethan and got straight to the point. "I need you to tell me everything," she said, as they sat in the small office behind the garage. "Start from when your mom left. Don't leave anything out." Ethan did. His words came out like a script. Not dramatic, not even emotional, just a list of things that happened. His mother had left over a year ago, just disappeared one night with a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I can't do this anymore." A few weeks later, Rick had shown up. He moved in, paid the rent, filled the fridge, just enough to keep anyone from asking questions. He made rules, dozens of them. No talking after dinner, no touching the television, no food unless he offered, and if you broke a rule, you paid for it.
Lily forgot one once. She left her stuffed bear on the couch. That was it. Rick had grabbed her, shouted that she was ungrateful, and shook her hard enough to make her cry. Ethan had stepped in, took the hit for her. After that, he started planning. He didn't know where they would go. He just knew they couldn't stay. Rachel listened to it all without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly and said, "We'll file for emergency custody. If the investigation confirms what you've shared, and I believe it will, you and Lily won't have to go back there. Not now, not ever. Outside the office, Lily was laughing. Not loud, just soft, surprised laughter that bubbled up from somewhere deep. She was sitting at a table with Hank, who was showing her how to play cards. She wasn't good at it. She kept dropping them or forgetting the suits, but she was smiling. And that smile, Ethan hadn't seen it in a long time. Maybe not since before their mother left. Maybe not since she'd been just a little girl with no fear. And now, for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan let himself hope. Not for a miracle, not for something big, just for this quiet moment in a garage full of strangers who were slowly becoming something else, something that almost felt like family. The following morning, the sound of soft knocking returned, this time not from the street, but at the office door, inside the garage. Standing outside was Danielle Shaw, a social worker with the state. She looked younger than Ethan expected, probably in her early 40s, with kind eyes and a messenger bag worn from years of use. She didn't glance around the garage like it was something to be judged. She looked at it like it might actually be a solution. Ethan opened the door and shook her hand, his palms sweating slightly, even in the cool air. Cal and Hank appeared quietly behind him, giving her respectful nods.
Danielle moved through the space slowly, taking it all in. She noticed the cot had been replaced with a small bed, clean linens folded at the edge. A bookshelf had been added against the back wall. Nothing fancy, just simple pine, but it was already half filled with books that Marianne had picked up from the thrift store. Nearby, a small desk sat under a window where Lily was seated, coloring with a fresh pack of pencils. Her face was focused, peaceful. She didn't notice Danielle watching through the glass. "I'd like to speak with her, if that's all right," Danielle said. Ethan nodded. "Okay," he replied, though a knot tightened in his chest. He stepped aside, watching closely as Danielle entered the room and sat across from Lily. Through the window, he could see the way the woman lowered herself to Lily's level, not towering over her, not rushing, just listening. At first, Lily seemed hesitant, clutching her drawings to her chest. Then, slowly, she turned the page and showed Danielle her newest creation, a red dragon with green eyes standing in front of a castle. They talked quietly for several minutes. Danielle smiled, pointed at the dragon, asked something that made Lily smile in return. When the door finally opened again, Danielle stepped out, looked at Ethan, then at the men standing behind him. "She's safe here," she said simply. "Happier than most kids I see in group care. Honestly, you've done something special." Cal gave a small nod, arms crossed but clearly moved. Hank stood beside him, his jaw tight, eyes soft. Danielle continued, "I'm recommending temporary emergency placement. Marianne as the legal guardian. The Hollow Creek Riders will provide housing and basic support. 90 days, while we continue the investigation into Rick's home. Based on what I've seen so far and what Ethan has shared, I don't believe either of these children should ever return there."
Ethan didn't speak. He just stared, the words washing over him slowly, like sunlight after a long storm. Behind him, Lily laughed again, a real laugh this time, as she lost another game of cards to Hank. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan allowed himself to exhale, not just out of fear, but out of relief. They weren't just visitors anymore. They weren't temporary. This garage, this group of people, this patchwork place, they were becoming home. That evening, the Hollow Creek Riders didn't throw a big celebration. No music blasted from speakers and no crowd gathered outside. But in their own quiet way, they marked the moment. Wren pulled out an old grill from the storage shed. Diesel brought potato salad in a chipped ceramic bowl. Soda sat in a cooler filled with ice. Ethan helped set out paper plates, still unsure how he fit into all this, but grateful to have something to do. Lily sat nearby on an overturned crate, watching Hank teach her how to shuffle cards.
She wasn't very good at it, but she didn't care. She was laughing again, and that sound, light, free, unguarded, made more than one of the club members pause and smile. Travis came up beside Ethan with a soda in his hand and nodded toward Lily. "She's got a good laugh," he said. "Bet it's been a while since you heard it." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, I think maybe before Mom left." Travis let that sit for a moment, then added, "Well, you're going to hear it a lot more now." And somehow, Ethan believed him. As the sun dipped below the trees, the garage lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The air smelled like grilled burgers, motor oil, and early autumn. Ethan stood near the fence line, watching the street beyond like an old habit he couldn't quite break. Cal came to stand beside him.
"You've been watching the door for her a long time," Cal said. Not as a question, just a truth spoken out loud. Ethan didn't argue. "Someone had to," he replied. Cal nodded. "Yeah, but not anymore. We've got it now. You can rest." Ethan looked at him then, searching for the catch, the condition, the part where the kindness would run out. But there wasn't one. Just Cal, steady as ever, meaning every word. "I don't know how," Ethan admitted quietly. "You'll learn," Cal said. "We'll teach you." Inside the garage, Lily was telling Marianne all about her dragon book, her hands moving through the air to show wings and fire and flight. Marianne laughed at something Lily said, and the girl beamed like she'd just discovered she was funny. Diesel leaned down and showed her the patches on her vest. Hank dealt out another hand of cards. Travis locked the front gate and checked the new alarm system. Wren walked the perimeter one last time before dark. Everyone moved with quiet purpose, like they'd done this before, like they understood what it meant to protect something fragile. That night, Lily fell asleep in the small lounge behind the office, the dragon book open on her chest, and a knitted scarf from Marianne draped over her shoulders. Her face was soft, peaceful, the face of a child who finally felt safe. Ethan sat nearby in an old chair, not ready to sleep yet, but no longer standing guard. Marianne brought him a pillow. Travis left a bottle of water on the table. Hank checked the locks one more time, and Cal stopped by with a question.
"You good?" he asked. Ethan nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think I am." Cal smiled. "Good. Tomorrow, Wren's gonna teach you how to change oil. Lily's got story time with Marianne at 10. It sounded simple, ordinary, like a normal day. And to Ethan, that felt more extraordinary than anything he could have imagined, because this wasn't just a one-night rescue. It was the beginning of something real. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect. Sometimes they wear denim instead of capes. Sometimes they work on motorcycles instead of missions, but they show up when it counts, and they stay. Ethan had given everything to protect Lily. The Hollow Creek Riders gave them both something just as powerful, a place to belong. And maybe that's what family really means.